3 families, 73 days, 0 takers. One smoke gray Maine Coon that every single person gave back until a 71-year-old widower and his 14-year-old granddaughter paid $180 for the cat everyone else walked away from. What happened on night 12, nobody saw coming. 3 families, 73 days, nobody stopped at Kennel 9. Then a 71-year-old widower and his 14-year-old granddaughter walked into a shelter and paid $180 for the one cat everyone else gave back. What happened on night 12 changed all 3 of them forever. Nobody warned them about the silence. Not the shelter workers, not the neighbors, not the well-meaning strangers on the internet who had opinions about everything. Nobody warned them that a Maine Coon abandoned 3 times could fill a house so completely that you'd forget it was ever empty. His name was Storm, a smoke gray Maine Coon found alone in an abandoned apartment on Birchwood Avenue on a Wednesday morning in January when the heat had been off for 11 days and the water bowl was completely dry. He was the color of a thundercloud at dusk, with amber gold eyes that seemed to be conducting a very private and very unfavorable assessment of every human being he encountered. His chest carried faint silver threads woven through the dark fur like lightning frozen mid-strike. He was enormous, built not like a house cat, but like something that had simply decided at some point that the rules applied to other animals. Together with his attitude, he weighed 22 pounds. Together with his history, he had been abandoned 3 times. He had never once lowered his guard. The first family kept him for 9 days before calling the shelter to say he was too much. The second family lasted 2.5 weeks, long enough to spend $180 on a premium cat tree that Storm immediately claimed as a watchtower and used exclusively to look down at them with quiet contempt. The third family returned him on a Saturday afternoon without explanation, without eye contact, and without the $34 bag of green-free food they had taken with them. The shelter director, a woman named Patricia who had worked in animal rescue for 19 years and believed she had seen everything, wrote in his file, "Highly intelligent, deeply independent, will outlast you, non-negotiable on his own terms." Nobody took him home. For 73 days, nobody even slowed down in front of Kennel 9. Until Robert. Robert Calloway was 71 years old and had been a high school history teacher for 34 years before retiring. He kept receipts organized in a shoebox by month. He still subscribed to 2 print newspapers. And he had, in the 16 months since his wife Dorothy had passed, eaten dinner standing at the kitchen counter every single night, because sitting at the table alone felt like a geography he hadn't earned. Dorothy had died in March, congestive heart failure. 43 years of marriage. The house held $22,400 in savings he hadn't touched, and a silence that grew louder the longer he lived in it. His granddaughter, Maya, arrived in June. She was 14, quiet in the specific way of someone who had recently decided that being invisible was safer than being seen. Her parents, Robert's son Daniel and his wife, had mentioned carefully that the year had been hard. A best friend who had moved away, a school that felt too large, too indifferent. She carried a journal everywhere she went and wrote in it constantly and never let anyone read it. "She just needs somewhere to breathe," Daniel had said. Robert understood breathing. He wasn't sure he had been doing much of it himself. It was Maya who found him. She had been sitting at the kitchen table on a Thursday evening, journal open, pen moving slowly, when she turned her laptop toward Robert without saying a word. One enormous gray cat staring out from a shelter page. Storm sitting upright with the composed authority of someone who had been wrongly imprisoned and awaiting an appeal. "He's been there 73 days, said Maya. 3 families gave him back." Robert studied the photo for a long moment. He thought about the counter where he ate standing up, the flowers he no longer bought. "We don't know anything about cats," he said. Maya looked back at her journal. "Neither did the 3 families he returned him," she said quietly. Robert drove to the shelter the next morning alone. He paid the $9 parking fee, walked inside, and asked to see Kennel 9. Patricia didn't soften the introduction. "Storm runs this facility," she said. "He has opinions about everything and the patience of someone who has been proven right before. He watches everything. He eats $90 worth of food a month, premium only, and last week he somehow opened the latch on the supply closet, walked in, and reorganized the toy shelf. We have no idea how he reached the handle." She paused. He is, without question, the most extraordinary animal I have personally encountered. His terms, not yours. That is non-negotiable. Robert stood in front of Kennel 9 for a long time. Storm looked at him with the measured assessment of someone conducting a job interview for a position he had already decided he would fill himself. He did not move toward the door, he did not look away, he simply waited with the unhurried confidence of someone who had all the time in the world and knew it. "What's the adoption fee?" Robert asked. $180. Robert wrote the check without asking for a discount. It was, he thought later, the first money he had spent in 16 months that felt like it was going somewhere. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, I have to be honest, that stings a little. Hit subscribe. You'll want to be here for what comes next. The first 48 hours were, in Patricia's word, educational. Storm disappeared into the space behind the washing machine within 4 minutes of arriving and did not emerge for 2 full days. Robert left a plate of food nearby, $4.80 in premium pâté, gone each morning and did not comment on it, did not reach in, did not attempt negotiation. On the second night, he placed a folded blanket near the washing machine without explanation. By morning, it had been rearranged, not moved, rearranged with intention. Meanwhile, Storm had been conducting a thorough survey of the entire house during the hours Robert slept, moving from room to room with the brisk efficiency of a property assessor. He located Dorothy's reading chair, a green velvet armchair in the corner of the living room that nobody had sat in since March, stood in front of it for a long moment, stepped up onto it, turned twice, and settled. He was still there 2 hours later when Robert came downstairs for coffee. Robert stood in the doorway and looked at him in Dorothy's chair and did not say anything for a very long time. Maya arrived 2 days later, dropped her bag inside the door, and immediately sat cross-legged on the hallway floor without explanation. No phone, no journal. Just sitting back against the wall, outside the laundry room where Storm was still making his assessments in the dark. She did this every evening. Same spot, same stillness, same quiet. Robert passed by on the second night and found her there at 8:30 p.m., eyes closed, simply present. He went to the kitchen, made 2 mugs of hot chocolate, $9.50 for the good tin, the kind Dorothy used to buy, and left one on the floor beside Maya without a word. Maya picked it up without opening her eyes. From behind the washing machine, something shifted in the darkness. On the fourth night, at 11:17 p.m., Storm walked out. He didn't announce himself. He walked to where Maya was sitting, stood in front of her for a moment with the quiet gravity of someone who had made a very careful decision, and then stepped directly into her lap, all 22 pounds of him. He turned once, settled, and began to purr, a low, resonant sound like a cello string vibrating in an empty room. Maya sat completely still. She didn't reach for him, didn't speak, just let her hands rest lightly on his back and breathed. Robert was watching from the hallway doorway. He didn't say anything. He went back to the kitchen and stood at the counter and found that for the first time in 16 months, the silence didn't feel like something pressing against him from the outside. It felt like something he was inside of, warm, shared. Storm had his own timeline for Robert. For 9 days, he observed. He watched Robert move through the house with his careful routines, the $220 grocery run on Wednesdays, the newspapers stacked by the armchair, the dinner he still ate standing at the counter. On the 10th morning, at 6:47 a.m., Storm walked into the kitchen while Robert was making coffee and sat directly in front of the counter where he stood every evening to eat. He looked at the counter, he looked at Robert, he looked at the kitchen table, he looked at Robert again. Robert understood the message. That evening, for the first time in 16 months, he set a place at the kitchen table. He sat down, he ate his dinner seated. Storm jumped up on the chair across from him, Dorothy's chair, and watched him eat with a satisfied expression of someone's work was nearly done. Robert looked at him across the table. "You are very bossy," he said. It was the first full sentence he had spoken inside the house in 4 days. Storm blinked once, entirely unbothered. Some stories deserve to be shared with someone who would understand them. The night Maya's journal went missing, the one she carried everywhere, the one with 2 years of her life in it, came downstairs at midnight, pale and frantic and close to tears. Robert was already awake. They searched for 37 minutes before they found it on Dorothy's reading chair, beneath Storm, who had apparently been sleeping directly on top of it for hours with the peaceful indifference of someone who had not technically stolen anything and was fully prepared to argue the point. Maya stood there staring at her flattened journal, and then she laughed. It started small and grew until she was laughing properly, fully, the way you laugh when something is both terrible and perfect at the same time. Robert watched her and felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for a long time. He started laughing too. Storm chose the exact moment to walk in from the hallway, look at both of them laughing in the middle of the night, and sneeze twice in rapid succession, which made everything worse. Or better, it was impossible to say. He had been abandoned 3 times, had spent 73 days watching families walk past Kennel 9. He had every reason to not trust anyone who walked through a shelter door. But Storm saw a man who had stopped sitting at his own kitchen table and decided, with characteristic efficiency, to fix it. And he saw a girl who needed somewhere quiet and warm to land, and simply walked into her lap and stayed. On his own terms, in his own time, for $180 and a green velvet chair and a tin of hot chocolate left on a hallway floor. Sometimes the ones nobody wanted are exactly who you needed all along. Is it patience that changed them, or do they change us first? Tell me in the comments.